conversations, negotiations always have ebbs and flows, peaks and valleys. At what point, Bill, did you get a sense that this thing really hit fast forward and this deal was getting done? Can you take us through some of the sort of bullet points and when it really accelerated?
Well, I mean, I think our teams, our respective teams, have been involved in this for a while now, a couple months, exploring the different possibilities of ways we could package and sell our rights for this year, or for years going forward, obviously the next 12 years. We had had various meetings over time, and then in terms of picking up momentum, we had a meeting last week in New York on Wednesday. And that's where I think we really engaged and moved this process forward, and it went pretty quickly from there.
2 lockouts, and yet we see a historic number in terms of what Rogers paid. If you went back to the original lockout, I think in 2004, could you have ever seen a type of deal like that? Could you have envisioned something like that so quickly? Does that speak volumes to the fans out there?
Well, it certainly speaks volumes to the fans, and I think obviously the state of the game today. I think people are really happy with the state of the product and the state of the game and the competitive balance and really the exciting play and the fantastic skill we see from players every night. So I really think it speaks to the overall product, but it is pretty mind-boggling. We've come a long way in a fairly short period of time. You know, it's an exciting future for the National Hockey League.
Bill, I was saying when I was in Columbus as president GM, we got $1.4 million a year from our Canadian TV package. 2 things. What does this do for the bottom lines? Obviously, people are saying it's the $300 million or whatever the total dollar is, divvied up amongst the 30 teams. But also, what's it do for the fan? Like, for instance, if there's a game on the Sportsnet East, what can that do for the Canadian hockey fan?
Well, I'll start with the second question first, because I think that's the most important aspect of this deal. It's a very, very fan-friendly deal. There's going to be more NHL hockey available to more fans in Canada than ever before in the history of the National Hockey League. And I think that's just fantastic. I mean, there's a high demand in this country, as everybody knows, for NHL hockey. And that demand's going to be served by Rogers and our partnership with Rogers on every single platform they have, and they have them all. And that's really the exciting element of this deal, which is the availability and the accessibility of hockey and NHL hockey. With respect to the economics of it, obviously it's the largest media deal we've ever had in our history. It's one of the largest media deals in Canadian history, so it obviously speaks to great things for the partnership looking forward. It will have a beneficial effect, obviously, on the rights fees that are paid to our clubs. But let's not forget that also leads to higher salaries for players, higher salary caps.
Right.
50% of this money is shared with the players as our partners, and so everybody does well.
Does that get discussed? Do you sit there in the NHL office, Bill, and say, okay, you know, the money's great, you're going to get a check for $6 or $7 million to start this season, but the salary cap has a potential of going to $80 or $90 million in a short period of time. Can you sustain that? Is a small market team going to hit that, or are we going to go through this whole cycle again of complaining in about 5 or 7 years?
I hope not. I mean, one's supposed to be related to the other. So to the extent your rights fee's going up, you're obligated to spend 50% of that rights fee on the players, but that means you're getting to keep 50% of the rights fee, and hopefully that improves your bottom line. So I think ultimately the benefit or the nature of this type of system is as revenues rise, so do player costs, so does the cap, so does the floor. That's the nature of this system, and you know, it's worked for us.
Are we at the point where, you know, you go to your respective clubs and say, hey, listen, this is what it is, and it's going to be this way for a long, long time. If you guys don't like it, you don't handle it, then move out and get somebody else?
Well, I think that's always been the nature of things. I can tell you, having attended every board meeting since I started the National Hockey League, I don't think I've ever really heard people complaining about revenues going up, even though it means that the cap goes up. That's not something you hear.
Going into this negotiation, there was widespread speculation that it was in the NHL's best interest to follow what we can loosely refer to as a football model, an NFL model, have as many broadcasters involved to try to drive up the price for everybody, keep CBC and their rights fee high, and TSN and certainly Sportsnet here. How did you end up, just as I positioned it before, saying, you know what, let's put everything under the Rogers tent? How did you get there?
Ultimately, we made a determination, or we thought it certainly was a possibility, that the most valuable form in which this content can exist is as one package sold to one rights holder who can then sublicense it and distribute it and exhibit it as they deem fit in partnership and consultation with us. And ultimately, that was the model that was embraced by Rogers as being a very valuable model, and that's the way we decided to go.
When did it really shift from the model of the 3 networks and then Rogers stepping up with the $5 billion situation? Was it recent, or has this always been talked about?
No, I think it's always been a possibility, and obviously there are 2 different ways you could have gone with that. And that was true from the start. We thought we would explore what the market would bear in this model, and ultimately it turned out to be the right model.
How much did Bell offer?
I'm not going to get into the specifics and negotiations.
I was joking. I didn't expect.
I will say, because I should say, TSN was a great broadcast partner for the entire period of time. They own National Hockey League rights, and they still own them for this year. They have great dedicated individuals, and we have the highest regard for them personally and professionally. We thank them for everything they've done for the National Hockey League, and we wouldn't be sitting here today without the work done by TSN.
Bill, you have a tough negotiation, obviously, with 2 lockouts with the Players Association, and then you form a partnership. Same thing with your TV deal. Can you talk about the similarities in negotiations? Are they the same? Is it different? Obviously, you're looking across players, and sometimes, they don't have that expertise. But in a deal like this, you're all sharks.
Right.
Right?
I would suspect, before Bill answers, it's a touch more cordial.
How can you compare the 2?
I would say they're different types of negotiations. They're definitely different types of negotiations.
That's a nice way to phrase it, Bill.
I think in the context, while I'm very happy with our relationship with the players and the Players Association and our CBA, I do agree that in that kind of environment and negotiation, it gets a little more adversarial than it is in television negotiations. In television negotiations, you're looking with the potential, your existing rights holder, potential new rights holders, and you're looking for ways to make it work. And obviously, the rights holder wants to keep the rights fee as low as possible, and the person with the rights wants to maximize that value, but it's a different type negotiation.
And it's not played out on a daily basis with the public.
It's not played in the public, which is a totally distinguishing factor, and it's not as constant.
So you're not going to let us know if TSN died on the Hill?
I'll laugh because I know what he's referring to. Probably nobody else does.
Yeah, exactly. So just get a feel of what the governors think of this. Not so much the governors, the actual owners. How have they embraced this? I know it has to be approved by the board, but Gary had said they were notified of it. What is their response thus far as a typical NHL owner?
Well, it's early. They only were notified. The clubs were only officially notified of the terms of the deal yesterday, or the fact of the deal yesterday. Gary had touched base with his executive committee prior to that. I think the response has been positive. But ultimately, this deal remains conditional on Board of Governors approval, which we'll seek in Pebble Beach next week, or week and a half from now, the 9th and 10th of December. But I would say the early returns are the clubs are very positive with respect to this deal.
Something that Keith Pelly referred to, Bill, in the press conference today, the Hockey Production Center of Excellence, something we should ask Keith and Scott about, but you have some authority on that as well. To your knowledge, is that creating a standalone, independent of everything else we do here at Sportsnet hockey house, for lack of a better term, production company?
I think it's integrated. I think it's integrated with the existing operations at Rogers. But it's one of the real best parts of this deal from our perspective is Rogers' commitment to essentially building product out of this relationship. And all the wraparound programming and the pregame shows and the postgame shows, and really just embracing hockey at the NHL level, even though they embrace it at all levels. That's really exciting. That's an exciting factor of this, and it's something they'll take to new levels and something we're really excited about.
Prior to this deal, what's the longest deal that you guys have entered in a national deal? Is it?
Well, certainly this would be the longest ever. I don't think we've ever done a 12-year deal. Obviously, our relationship, our national relationship in the United States is 10 years. I think the norm in sports properties is going longer term.
Does Brian Burke approve of the front loading of this deal, or is he?
I won't touch that either. I'm not going to touch that one either.
Just in terms of now entering a 12-year deal. And obviously, the number's great, and it seems like the number's great today. But with all this technology, was there a part of you guys in the NHL office that got a little nervous of where we're going in 6 or 7 years, and maybe this deal won't look so good at year 10 or 11, and we left too much on the table?
You always have that consideration, and it's always something you have to factor into the process. Having said that, when you enter into a relationship like this, you really hope that when you get to the out years of the relationship, you know, the value of what you have is actually exceeds what you're being paid, because it bodes well for the next negotiation. So I hope we can be as successful as possible in this relationship. I have no doubt we will be, and I think it'll be good for Rogers, and obviously it's going to be good for the National Hockey League.
Going back to the fans again, the NHL network, which has operated in Canada, the U.S., how does this impact the NHL network? Does that, obviously, the Canadian element of that would fall under this new deal as well?
He's looking for more work, by the way.
No, I'm looking for less work. No. Let's make that perfectly clear. It's called living in Florida. I'm not beating around here.
That's a fair question, and it's something that I think it's too early really to predict in any meaningful way. The NHL Network currently is owned a piece by Bell, a piece by Insight, and a piece by the National Hockey League, and that's something we're going to have to sit down with our partners on and decide the future of the NHL Network in Canada. We have a separate corporate entity that owns and operates the NHL Network in the United States, so that's something we're going to have to marry and work through, but I don't have a major concern about it.
Crystal ball something here, and right now the main focus for some of the obvious reasons on this deal is the television end of things. But fast forward this thing to the 25-26 season. Television, satellites, wireless, digital, by the time this deal comes to fruition and expires, what do you think the most important media element will be when it comes to the NHL?
Well, I think we're almost already there. I mean, I think obviously the television everywhere aspect of this is becoming the norm. I think the commissioner alluded to it in the press conference today that while people my age and Nick's age, we still watch hockey on television. The younger generation are watching hockey using other devices. Whether they be tablets or whether they be cell phones, and we have a major convergence going on, so that television signals aren't really television signals anymore. They're digital signals that you can pick up anywhere, and that's where the world's going. Rogers has embraced that and have created vehicles that are exciting for the league to be able to distribute on that basis.
Sometimes you guys get accused of being American suits sitting in New York, but how important was it for you guys to protect Hockey Night in Canada after 60 years?
It was important for us, and it was a strong consideration. It was something that we addressed with Rogers as we were negotiating this deal. They shared our vision in that regard, that this would be useful if we could get a relationship with the CBC and CBC on board to this arrangement. CBC, to their credit, Jeffrey Orridge, his credit, and embraced it. And as a result, Hockey Night in Canada as a brand and as a franchise will continue. And obviously that's very important.
Is there enough room for Doug MacLean and Grapes on the same show? Seriously,
he's got to go see Keith Pelly, I guess.
The clothes are similar. So how does the CBC element work with Rogers? Do they pay Rogers a rights fee to broadcast, or is it all encompassing? How is that structured, or are you at liberty to say?
Well, I would say, I think it was described a little bit at the press conference today, which makes me feel a little bit comfortable addressing it. There is no rights fee. and CBC and Rogers will realize all the revenue streams off the Hockey Night in Canada brand and production. So Canadian taxpayers aren't paying for the property, but the property will be available widely on a public broadcaster, and the public broadcaster will be able to use Hockey Night in Canada, an iconic brand, an iconic platform, to promote everything else on the CBC, which is good for the CBC.
The sales arm of that would go to the Rogers Group.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Editorial was an issue raised by a number of different reporters today, and also Don Cherry's name come up, and if you can address both, that would be fantastic. How does editorial control or editorial independence work now with this relationship and by extension with the CBC? And again, a sidebar to it, as many hockey fans want to know.
Are you pushing for the iDesk still?
Me and Morrison got to go back. Sorry, Andy Petrello.
He needs that 15-second shot again of that iDesk.
I haven't said back to you, Ron, in 3 years now, and I kind of miss it.
After 15 seconds.
And it's so fantastic.
Ron wanted
Would
after
you be
10.
quiet?
Ron wanted after 10 seconds.
Talk over scenic, and the future of Don Cherry, Bill.
Well, Rogers, under our relationship is with Rogers. Our contractual relationship is with Rogers. Doesn't mean we won't have continuing relationships with the sub-licensees, one of them being CBC. But Rogers ultimately has the say on the editorial control and the talent. We have consultation rights in that regard, meaningful consultation rights. So we're going to sit down and work on it together. And make sure we're doing the right things mostly for our fans.